Today's webinar is designed to help you prepare for the Working Washington 5 grant opportunity that will be opening on August 17th. We will also share a bit of information about the Convention Center Grant Program. For both of these opportunities, any organization receiving these grant dollars will be required to have a unique entity identification or UEI number. Today, we will walk you through how to get that UEI number so you will be ready for the grant application when it becomes available later this month. To start things off, we have Michael Wallenfels from Arts Washington, and we have Lynn Fetch and Shannon Halberstadt from Washington State Department of Commerce. These three presenters will give us an overview of the Working Washington 5 and Convention Center grant programs. After these overviews, we will then go to John Dicus and Janie Sacco from the SBA and Kate Hoy from the Washington State Procurement Technical Assistance Center. These presenters will review how to find and get a unique entity identification number. All right, Lynn, Michael, Shannon, turn it over to you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. This slide is about the beginning of our presentation, and it says Update, Working Washington Grants, Round 5 and Convention Center Grants. And I am Michael Wallenfels from ArtSWA, the Washington State Arts Commission, and I'm joined by my colleagues Shannon Halberstadt and Lynn Fetch at the Department of Commerce, who will answer your questions in the Q&A box. What does the Department of Commerce do? They strengthen communities. Some of the things they do are help with housing homelessness, infrastructure, business assistance, energy, planning, community facilities, crime victims and public safety, and community services. Much more than just granting, but we are here today to talk about some very important grants. Our agenda for this presentation, we will do program overviews of both the Working Washington Grants Round 5 and Convention Center Grants programs. We will talk about eligibility criteria for both, the application requirements, the review considerations, the Technical Support Center, the general timeline for both grants, and additional resources. Let's talk about Working Washington Grants Round 5. $70 million was allotted by the legislature for Working Washington Grants Round 5. Of the $70 million, 60% is directed to eligible businesses and nonprofit organizations in the arts, heritage, and science sectors, including those that operate live entertainment venues. The other 40% goes to most other sectors. This includes hospitality, fitness, taxis, and personal services. The awards for these grants max out at $75,000. And a snapshot view of it is this program offers one-time grants to small for-profit and nonprofit businesses and organizations that have experienced financial hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic and related public health measures. What are the requirements for eligibility for Working Washington Grants Round 5? The basics are you need to be an active for-profit or nonprofit business or organization. You need to have a UBI or EIN number. You need to be physically located in Washington State, and you need to have been in operation prior to January 1st of 2021. Regarding finances for eligibility, you need to be able to show financial hardship because of the pandemic. You need to have not reported more than $5 million in income in 2019 and had at least a revenue of $10,000 in 2019 and 2020. And that revenue, at least 51% of it needs to have been generated in Washington State. Some other considerations. These funds cannot be used to pay other government fees or taxes. So this says you cannot have necessary business costs or expenses that are not government fees or taxes. You need to have not permanently closed or do not intend to permanently close in 2022. And you need to follow all COVID-19 health requirements. There's one more thing that we'd like to say about Working Washington Round 5. You can only apply for one business. If you have multiple businesses, please apply for your largest or your most impacted business. Who is ineligible to apply for Working Washington Grants Round 5? Multinational corporations, child care providers, not including recreation or entertainment, Schools, such as preschool through kindergarten, kindergarten through 12th grade and higher education, public libraries, science companies, including research and/or development laboratories or services in science manufacturing. And what I'll say quickly here is when we said science sector earlier as part of the designated target group for this grant, think more like science centers or maker spaces. Other ineligible entities include professional services, such as accounting, insurance, legal, financial services and firms and architects, hospitals or healthcare providers, including dentists or chiropractors. However, personal services such as massage are eligible. Property management and real estate, including owners and operators of short-term rental properties. Hosts and operators of a vacation or short-term rental unit, such as Airbnb or VRBO. Licensed marijuana, cannabis operations. This does not include CBT retailers. Drivers of shared ride companies, such as Lyft or Uber. However, independent taxi and limo services are eligible. Third-party delivery drivers, such as Amazon or DoorDash. Government entities or elected officials. Businesses that have permanently closed or intend to close permanently in 2022. Passive businesses, investment companies, and investors who file a Schedule E on their personal tax returns. Carrying on, financial businesses primarily engaged in the business of lending, such as banks, finance companies, or factoring company. Businesses like this is a repeat businesses that have permanently closed or intend to close in 22. Businesses engaged in any socially undesirable activity or activity that may be considered predatory in nature, such as rent-to-own businesses and check cashing businesses. Businesses of a prurient sexual nature, such as adult businesses, speculative businesses, businesses primarily engaged in political or lobbying activities, businesses without a physical location in Washington state, businesses that restrict patronage for any reason other than capacity or age restrictions per regulations. Any business that's found to be in violation of any COVID-19 related order issued by the governor. This includes remaining open when ordered to close or disregarding COVID-19 health or safety measures applicable to that business. Businesses found to have compliance or regulatory issues as of March 2020. Businesses that are actively engaged in current or pending lawsuits. Businesses disbarred by the federal government, or businesses actively pursuing a bankruptcy declaration. Let's talk about the Convention Center Grants Program. The legislature allotted $5 million to the Convention Center Grants Program. For this grant, eligible applicants must show proof that at least 25% of their revenue is created in part by conventions hosted in Washington state. So don't think of the Washington State Convention Center, but think about all the businesses and vendors that depend on the activity of conventions that happen in those places. The awards for this grant go up to $500,000. In a snapshot view, this program offers one-time emergency relief grants to for-profit and nonprofit businesses and organizations that are dependent on the economic activity created through conventions hosted in Washington state. What are the requirements for eligibility for the Convention Center grants? The basics are, and these are very similar to the Working Washington Grants Round 5 program, you need to be an active for-profit or nonprofit business or organization, have a UBI or EIN number. You need to have hosted an in-person convention or depended on the function of a convention to sell goods or services. You need to have canceled a convention or experienced a reduction in participants in 2020 or 2021. And you need financial documents from 2019, 2020, and 2021. For the finances, you need to be able to show financial hardship because of the pandemic. You need to have made more than 25% of your revenue from convention center activity. You did not report more than $100 million in income in 2019 and had a revenue of at least $10,000 in 2019. And that revenue, at least 51% needs to have been generated in Washington state. Are the considerations? Again, like Working Washington Grants Round 5, you cannot use these funds to pay for other government fees or taxes. You need to have not permanently closed or intend to permanently close in 2022. You need to follow all COVID-19 health requirements. And like for Working Washington Grants Round 5, we encourage that applicants must apply for one business only, and those with multiple businesses should apply on behalf of their largest or most impacted business. Who is ineligible to apply for the convention center grants? Businesses that make less than 25% of their annual revenue from convention center activities, trade shows or exhibitions, or professionally exclusive conventions, conferences, or summits, multinational corporations, childcare providers, not including recreation and entertainment, school, such as pre-K, kindergarten through 12th grade and higher education, public libraries, science companies, including research and or development laboratory or services and science manufacturing, professional services, such as accounting, insurance, legal, financial services and firms and architects, hospital and healthcare providers, including dentists and chiropractors, but like Working Washington Grants Round 5, professional services such as massage are eligible. Property management or real estate, including owners or operators of short-term rental properties, hosts or operators of a vacation or short-term rental unit like Airbnb or VRBO, licensed marijuana, cannabis operations. This does not include CBD retailers. Drivers of shared ride companies such as Lyft or Uber. However, independent taxi and limo services are eligible. Third-party delivery drivers such as Amazon and DoorDash are not eligible. Neither are government entities or elected officials in their offices, passive businesses, investment companies, and investors who file a Schedule E on their personal tax returns. Carrying on, financial businesses primarily engaged in the business of lending, such as banks, finance companies, or factoring companies. Businesses that have permanently closed or intend to permanently close in 2022. Businesses engaged in any socially undesirable activity or activity that may be considered predatory in nature, such as rent-to-own businesses and check cashing businesses. Businesses of a prurient sexual nature, such as adult businesses, speculative businesses, businesses primarily engaged in political or lobbying activities, businesses without a physical location in Washington State, businesses that restrict patronage for any reason other than capacity or age restrictions per regulations, businesses that have been found to be in violation of any COVID-19 related order issued by the governor. This includes remaining open when ordered to close or disregarding COVID-19 health or safety measures applicable to that business. Also ineligible, businesses found to have compliance or regulatory issues as of March 2020, businesses that are actively engaged in current or pending lawsuits, businesses disbarred by the federal government, and lastly, businesses actively pursuing a bankruptcy declaration. What will you need to apply to the Working Washington Grants Round 5 program and the Convention Center Grants program? To apply, you will need an active Washington State Unified Business Identifier, also known as a UBI number. This can be a business license, business registration, tax registration. An employee identification number, the EIN, if applicable. The slide reads is, but please understand this as if applicable. A unique entity identifier, the UEI number. A valid government issued photo ID of a business owner or the authorized nonprofit representative. That we will ask for identity verification of the applicant. You will need annual business revenues from 2019, 2020, and 2021. Please note that businesses established in 2020 need only input 2020 and 2021 revenues for Working Washington Grants Round 5. However, 2019 revenues are required for the Convention Center Grant Program. What will you need to upload? You will need to be able to upload a valid government issued photo ID of the business owner or an authorized nonprofit representative. If applicable, the verification of a tribal member-owned business, such as license or registration from a federally recognized tribe in Washington State. Financial documentation from 2019, 2020, and 2021 showing gross annual business revenues. Please note that businesses established in 2020 need only upload 2020 and 2021 financial documents for Working Washington Round 5. However, 2019 financial documents are required for the Convention Center Grant Program. What kind of financial documents can you upload? Applicable financial documents may include one or more of the following: the IRS Form 1040 for sole proprietors, and the following: Schedule C, profit and loss from business. Other forms include the IRS Form 1065, the partnership return. No K-1s are required for this. The IRS Form 1120, corporation return. No schedules are required for that. The IRS Form 1120S for S corporation returns. No K1s required for that. The IRS Form 1099-MISC for independent contractors. The IRS Form 990, 990EZ, or 990N for nonprofits. And for fiscally sponsored nonprofits only, the profit loss statement. What will be considered when the application is reviewed? They will consider the reduction in revenue or activity between 2019 and 2020. For the convention center grant applications, they may also consider the size of the business measured by 2019 revenue and reduction in revenue from 2019 compared to 2020 or 2021. They'll consider recent Working Washington grants you have received, for-profit and nonprofit businesses that operate in a distressed area and or are owned by someone from a historically disadvantaged or underserved population. Consideration may be given to business owners who self-identify as a minority, veteran, LGBTQ+, or women. For eligible nonprofit businesses, their mission must provide support or services to underserved or underrepresented communities. Consideration may be given to eligible applicants whose physical businesses is located in one of the 15 identified counties identified as distressed. This includes Clallam, Jefferson, Grays Harbor, Mason, Pacific, Waikiakum, Lewis, Cowlitz, Yakima, Grant, Franklin, Okanagan, Ferry, Stevens, and Pendoray. What kind of technical support will be available? Starting on August 15th, we will have translated materials available in 15 languages: Spanish, Vietnamese, Russian, Ukrainian, Tagalog, Somali, Korean, Arabic, Punjabi, Amharic, Khmer, Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Lao, and Marshallese. On August 17th, when the portal opens, we will have email and phone support in English, Spanish, Mandarin Chinese, and Russian. There will be a phone number you can call. Please note that if you call this number right now, you will not be able to get support. The support begins on August 17th, but the phone number will be 888-242-0169, and you can email at commercegrants@submittable.com. And we encourage all applicants to email for the quickest response. What are the general details about these programs? The partners are the Washington State Arts Commission, also known as ArtsWA, and Submittable. The program guidelines, eligibility criteria, and FAQs are all available at commercegrants.com. The general timeline, August 17th through September 9th, the application portal will be open and will remain open for 24 days. From mid to late September, the applications will be reviewed. And in early October, Commerce will begin to notify grantees and disperse the funding. So please know the application portals will open the morning of Wednesday, August 17th, 2022, and close Friday, September 9th, 2022 at 5:00 p.m. Pacific time. And that is a hard deadline. Where can you go to learn more? commercegrants.com is your home base for all the information. This is where you will go to submit your application between August 17th and September 9th of 2022, to read the frequently asked questions about both the Working Washington Grants Round 5 programs and Convention Center Grants programs, and get support in additional languages. SAM.gov is where you will go to register for a UEI, and at arts.wa.gov/WW5, you can sign up for email updates about these grant programs and download the free partner toolkit, which includes social media posts, newsletter example, a one-pager and talking points available in English, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese. Thank you, everybody. This presentation was put together by Lynn Fetch and Shannon Halberstadt at the Department of Commerce, and myself, Michael Wallenfels, the Communications Manager at ArtsWA.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Lynn and Shannon, for answering some of the questions that people have already posted. A reminder, please post your questions in the Q&A box. So next up, we have John Dicus and Janie Sacco from the Small Business Administration and Kate Hoy from PTAC to walk you through the process of receiving a unique entity identification.
Good morning. This is the System for Award Management website, also known as SAM.gov. This website is used by the federal government to award contracts, to award grants, and to award anything else that uses federal money. If you are interested in federal government contracting, there is a separate registration than just getting a UEI, which for the purpose of the WW5 grant, you would just be going for the UEI. If you are interested in federal government contracting, we highly recommend working with your local Washington PTAC center and your local SBA district office, and we can discuss the various SBA programs that are available and help you get registered with SAM.gov for federal government contracting. So as of April 4th, 2022, all entities receiving federal funds via contracts, grants, etc., must have a UEI, a unique entity ID. This replaced the old DUNS number. Working Washington 5, WW5 is a state grant program. However, the funding for WW5 comes from the federal government, which requires a UEI. A UEI is a unique 12-character alphanumeric ID assigned by the federal government via SAM, the System for Award Management at SAM.gov. It is important to note that there is no charge to register or maintain your entity information on SAM.gov. It is absolutely free, and getting a UEI is also absolutely free. So if your firm was already registered in SAM.gov, you've probably already been issued a unique entity ID that is viewable in SAM.gov. This includes inactive registrations that could have actually been from ccr.gov, which was the website used prior to SAM.gov. And your UEI is located on your SAM.gov entity record, which we will go over in the next few slides if you've already been registered in SAM.gov prior to the April 4th, 2022 switch. So if you want to view your UEI in SAM.gov, first you would log into SAM.gov. And in the Entities section of the workspace, you will select the numbered bubble above the active registration highlighted in red on this slide. And your unique entity ID, or UEI, will be displayed below your entity name in this section. And now I will pass it over to Janie Welch, who will discuss how to obtain your unique entity ID from SAM.gov if you were not previously registered in SAM.gov, and automatically issued a UEI.
Thank you, John. And I am going to turn off my video just to make sure that I have good content and voice for you. First of all, this really is a very important tool for you to obtain your Working Washington 5 grant. It is required. So we're going to walk through obtaining a unique entity identifier from SAM.gov. When you are in SAM.gov, the first screen that comes up is this one, indicating that there's been a transition to the unique entity identifier used in SAM.gov. So what you want to do is review it and then scroll to the bottom of the screen and click OK. You then need to register your entity with SAM.gov. So this page gets you started. And what you need to do is go to the right and click on the Get Started button twice. You will then be transitioned to accepting the terms to sign into SAM.gov. and the screen will look like this. So again, review the information, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and click on the green Accept button. You are now officially starting your signing into this process. But first of all, you need to create your account. And SAM.gov has you do that by utilizing your email address. So you will enter in your email address to start the process. Right below where you enter your email address, you do need to select a language preference. And there are 3 options: English, Spanish, or French. Once you do that, then you click on the I read and accept the login.gov rules of use, and you may view them by clicking on the icon to the right. Once you have clicked on the I read and accept the rules of use, you then click on the blue and white submit button. Next, you are in the check and confirm your email. So what you want to do is go to your inbox of your emails and make sure that you received an email. This allows you to confirm your email address. So you have 2 options here. Once you've checked your email, if you didn't receive an email, you can click the resend button. Or you have the option of using a different email address, and you can click on that icon and then put a different email address in and follow the process again. Once you have confirmed your email, you click on the blue and white confirm email address icon at the bottom of the page on the right. With any system, once you have a user ID, you also need to have a password. So you need to create a strong password on this particular page. What you start with is a confirmation of your email address, and then you use 12 characters. And we want a strong password. So you might want to do a combination of letters, numbers, and symbols. You have the option of having your password displayed as you are entering it in. Once you put in a password, you click the blue and white continue button at the bottom of the page. Now you have a setup on authentication for login.com. And what you need to do at this point is on the left, select your authentication method. So most of you will check the text or voicemail box. And to the right, you will put in your corresponding phone number. And then you will select whether you want a text message or a phone call. Once you have done that, you then click the send code button and follow the steps to validate your account. You will then see the following screens, and on the left, you will see validation that you've created an account with login.gov. And you will then be asked for a determination if it's okay to share this information with SAM.gov. And at the bottom of the screen on the left, you will click the blue and white agree and continue button. Then on the right side, you have SAM.gov is using login.gov to allow you to sign into your account safely and securely. You are signed in with the following email address, and it will provide your email address. If it is correct, you then click on the blue and white continue button, or you may also switch emails if you choose. Now we are officially in the getting your UEI part of this and getting started in SAM.gov. You essentially have completed the first phase of this registration process. And you can tell that because if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you will see in yellow the notifications that are there. Now, the really important part here is that you want to click on the green Get Started button to the right. So we'll do that and transition to the next page. Now, I want you to take a look at this page because this is a very important section for you. And because you only need to obtain the unique entity identifier for financial award purposes, the box that you will check is the third one, that is get a unique entity ID only. This is, again, very important. You don't want to select the other two buttons. All right. And once you select that, then you will scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there are three icons. You want to select the one that is circled in red with the arrow pointing to the right for your next button. This will transition you to entering your entity information. So again, what you want to do here is you want to enter in your legal business name. You may put in your doing business name as an option. And then you want to put in your physical address. Please keep in mind that as you transition to the next page, this system will be searching many, they indicate millions of records to find your match for your business. So please, again, be as detailed as you can here, entering in your legal entity name. Your doing business name is optional, but your physical address, not your mailing address, but your physical address for the business. And then you go to the bottom of the page and click the right arrow button to go to next. This next selection phase is extremely important for you as well. What you are doing is you are validating what you entered in the box. Where you see test account and the address, you will see the business name that you entered in the prior slide and the address that you entered in the prior slide. You have two selection options that you need to make on this page. For the selection process on the left under number 1, you are required to enter in the first box selection being my entity is listed and all details are correct. That's one option choice. The one below it is my entity is not listed. And then the third option choice is my entity is listed, but some details are incorrect. I am going to provide you in the next few slides how to process through each of those. But we are going to start with the easiest one. And that is my entity is listed and all details are correct. If you select that button, you also select a button for number 2. And what is selected may be the top or one of the others, but it is the best match to your legal entity. This can be just your trade name and correct address as an option. So if you select my entity is listed and all details are correct in number 1, and you select an entity in number 2 that matches your business, you then go to the bottom of the page and select the next button. You are then required to validate additional information. So what you would do is select the state of incorporation from the drop-down box. In our case, it will likely be the state of Washington. And then you hit next at the bottom of the page. You now have the ability to request the unique entity ID. You have a validated entity, your business name and address. You have the option right below it of including or excluding this information in the public search. And then you have to go to the bottom to certify that you are an authorized individual to conduct transactions on behalf of the entity. Once you do that, you will then click Receive Unique Entity ID and hit Next. And success, you have your 12-character unique entity identifier tied to your legal entity at your physical address in the state of incorporation. And you then can move on to going into SAM.gov, count workspace, and view your UEI. Now, if you do not get this immediately, you can go to your email address tied to this and monitor your emails for confirmation of the UEI number. All right. So we're on to the next slide. So what do you do if your entity is not listed at all? This is a little bit more challenging. So you click on My Entity is Not Listed. You do not select an entity because you have no matches. At the bottom of the page, you then click on Verify Entity Details. You will then be asked to provide documentation, and Kate Hoy, our PTAC counselor, will be providing documentation examples that you will provide for the validation. The next option is My Entity is Listed, but some details are incorrect. If this is the case, then you do a number 2, select an entity that is closest to your business, and then click on Verify Entity Details. Once you are validating your entity details, you do need to provide documentation to support the corrections that you want done. So again, it gives you the options of reading the list of acceptable documents and file types. The most important thing here is really to make sure you are providing documents to support what correction needs to be done and follow the instructions specifically. All right. And again, Kate Hoy is going to go over the documents. But in this particular section, what you then do is, once you identify the documents that you want to have to provide or want to provide to support the information, you then attach them in this box where you can drag the file there or choose from a folder. And then in box number 3, you can provide specific details about your specific situation, indicating what is incorrect. So when you're doing this, I just want you to understand that you need to make sure your document is in a proper file type and that the documentation fully supports the change. Once you get through this process and hit submit at the bottom of the page, you will then need to watch for emails from General Services Administration Federal. That's what comes in from your email, and the email address it is being sent from is fsdsupport@gsa.gov. I do want to share that when I did a test using my husband's and my business, I selected this option because some of the information was incorrect. I provided appropriate documentation to support the change that I wanted to have done. And I did receive an email from General Services Administration Federal. And the process was actually very efficient. And the turn time was not that long. And I received my UEI for our business very promptly from the GSA and this process. So please, if you do need to make a change, do so feeling comfortable that the process will be done efficiently. With that, I am going to say thank you, and I am going to transition this presentation to Kate. Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. I appreciate it. So I'm going to read you the list of acceptable documents that you may submit. Certified copies of your articles of organization or incorporation, share certificates, tax returns or filings, certificate of formation, articles of formation, or certificate of organization. You also can submit a recent utility bill, a recent bank statement, doing business as documentation, stock ownership, EIN or employer identification number documentation from IRS, the tax ID confirmation documents from IRS, company bylaws, operating agreements, or for sole proprietors or individuals, a non-expired driver's license, which does not have to be a real ID. We recommend that you start with 1 or 2 documents. Less is more in this case. The document should be less or must be less than 5 years old and contain both your correct legal business name and your correct physical address. Please note, PO boxes are not accepted as physical addresses. And tax returns or filings and bank statements should be redacted or limited. They only need to show relevant data to prove the information you are providing is true. As Janie mentioned, you do need to upload specific file types. These file types are PDF, PNG or PNG, JPEG or JPG or JPEG, or BMP. Examples of acceptable documents. First, we've got a certified copy of your articles of incorporation or organization, or a recent utility bill. So when creating a help ticket, it's important that you clearly state what is not correct or what does not match what's presented in the text boxes that were provided. Include the correct name, what the name should be, the correct address, what the address should be, or any other data for which you're providing documentation. For instance, you'll provide the name of the file, of the document that you're uploading. This is my electric bill, articles of incorporation, etc., of the document that you're uploading. Provide as much detail as possible. This will help the validation agents validate your business name and your address. Here are two examples. There are no matches for my entity. I have included my recent utility bill to show my legal business name and physical address. Or, my entity's physical address does not show up in any of the matches presented. My correct name and physical address is. I have included a recent utility bill with my legal business name and physical address for evidence. To issues, this process can take a while. So it's important that you visit SAM.gov and start working on getting your unique entity ID or your UEI as soon as possible. You do not need your UEI to apply for the Working Washington 5 or Convention Center grants. However, you will need to have it prior to receiving funding should you get awarded a grant. Note, the Federal Service Desk is currently experiencing a backlog of these entity validation requests. Your request will likely take up to 10 working days minimum before you receive a response. And it's important that you only create one help ticket. Creating multiple tickets does not speed up handling your issue, and it actually will slow down the overall process. Do not call or chat up the help desk at FSD.gov about entity validation. The specialists that handle entity validations are a different team, and they can only communicate with you through your created incident. It's important that you regularly monitor your email, the email that is tied to your SAM account. An entity validation agent will be in touch with you via that email if they require additional information. Please note, nothing will change in your SAM account. You will keep checking emails and get instructions, and then eventually you will go back into SAM to complete your application. You may also log into your SAM.gov account, check on the workspace option at the top right menu bar that Janie showed you earlier, and view your pending requests and notifications. And that's it for me and the UEI.
All right. Well, thank you, Kate, Janie, and John. Next, we will begin the Q&A portion of the program. Another reminder, we are recording this webinar, and we will be sending out a transcript of the questions and answers with the links to this webinar, the slides, and the resources as a follow-up to you. All right, I'm going to begin with a couple of questions that we have in our Spanish breakout room. Samantha, can you cue that up for us?
Sure thing. Fernanda and the other Spanish interpreter, perhaps I can just read the questions in Spanish and you can provide consecutive interpretation into English so our speakers can hear. Great. Yo soy una proveedora de cuidado de niños y apliqué hace unos meses, pero nunca tuve respuestas. Pero nunca tuve respuesta.
Let me bump in for just a moment. Yeah, please. Vamos consecutivo en ese entonces.
David, sorry, did you need to say something?
If you're going to read in Spanish, it'd be better to read that in the Spanish channel instead of reading in Spanish in the English channel, if possible.
Okay.
Well, David, could you read the question in English so then we can get the Q&A portion started?
You know, I'm not looking at the question that she's looking at, so I can try and search for it.
It's okay. I think the interpreter just translated the question. So it was, I just applied for my UEI, but I have not heard back. Maybe the larger question is how long is the processing time to receive a UEI? if someone could
And
address
I
that
would say,
question.
is that a Janie or John or Kate question?
Yeah, I can jump in there. It's been taking, I would plan on it taking up to about 10 days. It does depend on how complicated the issue is or what exactly is happening. It has been getting quicker, as Janie mentioned. So if you do upload the proper documentation and it's crisp and clear, you should not have a problem.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to go to our next question that asks, are we eligible for Working Washington 5 if we received funds from a Revive Washington grant in the past? And what about if we received a past Working Washington grant? So I think Michael is, or Lynn?
Yes, you are eligible to apply for this round of grants if you received a grant through ArtsWA and or received a previous Working Washington grant. If you meet the eligibility criteria, we encourage you to apply.
Great. Our next question asks, says, can you remind me, how can I check and see if my nonprofit has a UEI?
If you have registered,
No, go ahead.
if you've registered in the past for any federal funding, whether it's through grants.gov or any other contract, anything at all that was federal funding direct, you would have registered in SAM and you already have a UEI. You can go into SAM.gov and you can do an entity search and put your name in and see if you have, if your name is in there or not. It would have occurred in the past if you had gotten federal funding direct in the past at any time.
All right, great. Thank you. Our next question is from a nonprofit. It asks, our nonprofit has not yet finalized their IRS 990 for 2021. Will you accept another form of financials, like a profit and loss statement? And this might be a Lynn or Shannon question.
This is Shannon, and right now we're asking for completed forms, 990 forms from nonprofits. This question came up a couple of times in the Q&A, so we can look into whether in 2021, if there's a draft 990 form that's available, whether that can be accepted. But currently, we're only accepting completed 990 forms.
Okay, thank you. And if there's new information on that, hopefully that'll be in an FAQ, or maybe we might be able to send that out as additional information to our participants here.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yes, no, thank you. All right, so the next question asks, for Working Washington 5, how is financial hardship as a result of the pandemic being defined? Is it as a drop in revenue between 2019 and 2020? What about businesses that started operations in 2020? What are the comparison metrics?
That's a really great question. So for the comparison to demonstrate financial hardship for those businesses that were in operation, prior to 2019 and previous to that, we would be looking at the revenue decrease as the primary way to demonstrate that impact for COVID-19. Now, for those businesses that started in 2020, likely, you have your business in operation, your plans in operation, and we heard from so many folks last round that started the tail end of 2019 and were not eligible. So opening up the eligibility to our 2020 businesses was something that we were really eager to do, and luckily we were able to do that. So a way that a business opened in 2020 can demonstrate that they experienced financial hardship is by describing it to us. There's going to be an open text field in the application itself. Well, they'll have the ability to tell us their story, because we understand that their financials might not show that revenue decrease. However, likely they were either forced to close by the public health measures and or experienced something in 2020, like many new businesses did, that they've experienced financial hardship. So there will be an opportunity, in addition to your financials that you upload, for you to describe that experience and how you experience financial hardship for the 2020 businesses.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Our next question asks, I submitted tax returns, but the business address is missing a letter on those tax returns. Will the tax returns be an accepted document?
I believe this is a UEI question.
That may be an issue. It'd be good if you had another document that did not have an issue in the name. That may cause an issue.
Okay, all right. All right, I am going to the open questions and answers now on the webinar. The next question asks or states, a business owner created a ticket to correct business information in the SAM.gov portal. He got a message with introductions to submit other documents, but was given a due date which expired. Does he need to start all over, or is there a way to reopen the ticket? And I guess that's a UEI question, so maybe.
This
Janie?
is Janie.
Oh, go ahead.
Kate and I may disagree on this, so please feel free to jump in here. But what in that particular case, I think what I would do is reach out via the chat and the email and make a determination of what documentation you need to provide, because there clearly is an error in some of the data that's put in there, which needs to be corrected. You do not want to restart another application. That will continue to slow down this process. So I would utilize the tools in the chat, the phone, the email to go in and ask for assistance.
All right, and Kate, do you agree, or do you have another
No, I
point?
agree. I think that's great advice. Thanks, Jane.
All right, just wanted to check. All right, our next question asks, we have a SAM.gov registration and a UEI number. However, due to problems with an outgoing administrator, our registration went inactive. We have applied to revive it and our status is pending. Does this affect our ability to submit a grant application? I think this would be a Lynn or Shannon or Michael question.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Sure. So the question asks, we have a SAM.gov registration and a UEI number. However, due to problems with an outgoing administrator, our registration went inactive. We have applied to revive it and our status is pending. Does this affect our ability to submit a grant application?
If your business or organization has applied for a UEI number, we encourage you to apply. However, you cannot receive funding from this grant program until you have a valid UEI number.
So I think they have a UEI number. The question was in the SAM.gov system, they are, the status is pending because of a former administrator of that account.
Yeah, so in the application itself for specifically for Working Washington Round 5 in the Convention Center, we simply need an applicant to enter a valid 12-character UEI number for our records. Now, when it comes to their registration or challenges that they're having in SAM.gov, that won't impact their ability to apply for our programs.
All right, great, thank you. All right, our next question asks, we had a transition in leadership at our nonprofit. We were told we needed to change our SAM account. Will that affect us if we received a grant in the past?
So that will not affect your ability to be eligible to apply for Working Washington Round 5 or Convention Center. What we will be asking for in the applications for both is a valid UEI number. If you are not able to provide a valid UEI number in the application, We will do our best to follow up with those potential awardees that did not provide one in the application itself, and try to do some outreach to collect that information after the fact. But I just want to clarify too, and what Shannon said is, you will not be able to receive grant funds if you do not provide a valid UEI number to the Department of Commerce to receive grant funds. So we please, we encourage everyone to start the process early if you are able. Don't wait till the last minute, because so many different things can happen along the way. So we encourage you to start the process early. Luckily, we have gotten an advanced start on doing most of our outreach and compared to prior rounds. So we have about 2 weeks still before the grant portal even opens. And then we have 24 days that is open. So it does not close until September 9th. So given that, we still have a month to start preparing and gathering the materials you need to apply. One of those things would be registering to get your UEI number.
Yep, great advice. And one reason why we're doing this webinar to get folks in the process of getting that UEI number. And the next question actually comes from someone who has recently applied. They are getting an error with receiving the CAGE approval. It says they've done this twice. Is there any support I can call to help get this issue resolved?
PTAC can help with CAGE issues, although getting a UEI only does not involve CAGE. So you must be applying for either a contract or a federal grant directly, which is different than what we're talking about today. If that's the case and you are getting hung up in CAGE, PTAC can help.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, our next question asks, our nonprofit does not have a physical address. We use a city facility. What do we do?
The federal government does require physical addresses. I would ask with what address you used in your UBI application. I think that also requires a physical address. Maybe Lynn or somebody can clarify that for me. But you do need a physical address in order to be validated.
And it cannot be a city address. Is that correct?
Right, and there are some rural issues. You could contact PTAC to find out if you're in a certain specific issue that might be useful, but in 99% of the cases, you've got to get a physical address. But I would probably refer to your UBI paperwork and see how did you get past that and what did you use there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next question asks, our nonprofit had no income last year. Can we still apply?
So the requirement to be eligible to apply is that you must have had a minimum of $10,000 in revenue in 2019 or 2020. So if you meet that eligibility criteria and the additional eligibility criteria, we do encourage you to apply. There may have been extenuating circumstances that we're unaware of, and I know each and every business operates differently. So use those open text fields to explain to us why you may not have revenues for last year, but you must meet that minimum revenue requirement to be eligible to apply.
All right, thank you. Our next question asks, if a business owner has an Itin, that's ITIN, are they able to apply for a UEI?
What is an ITIN? What's the I?
Individual tax identification number.
Okay, thanks. Probably. It sounds like it would.
Yes,
I just
believe
need whatever you're paying your taxes under. So they want to know that you're paying legal taxes. So that's why they're collecting that information. So if it's a legal tax number that is what you're paying your taxes under, then yes, it will work.
Great. All right. Our next question asks, we have a fiscal sponsor and we are applying for a 501c3. Can we still apply for the grant?
So Organizations that are fiscally sponsored can apply for the grant so long as they have their own independent UBI number and they have their own independent financial documentation. For fiscally sponsored programs only, we do allow use of profit and loss statements for documentation.
All right, great. All right, our next question asks, as a choral group, we don't have a physical address. We do not get bank mail or any official mail at a physical address. We do not have utility bills. We only have an EIN that we received in 2015. We have filed 990s. What are my options to cross this physical address barriers? We fulfill all the other requirements for this grant.
I guess I would ask about the UBI. Did they get a UBI number and how they solve that?
Can you explain what a UBI number is in case someone may not have one?
A UBI number is a unified business identifier. It is issued to you by state agencies to track your business across state agencies. It can be issued through the Department of Revenue is generally how you would register your business and get a UBI number. It can also be issued to you through Secretary of State. If you incorporate, you can receive your UBI number through a Secretary of State as well. That number is used by all state agencies to identify you as a business.
All right, great.
That UBI is issued by the Department of Licensing when you establish your business. So, and then it is used by everybody. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Janie.
Thank you. That's a good ad. All right. The next question asks, I own a graphic design and communications company. Are we in the professional services list? Oh, sorry, it just moved on me. We create and deliver physical goods for our clients, printed materials, but also build communication strategies that include websites, branding, and accessibility and inclusion consulting. Are they able to apply for the grant?
This is a really interesting question. It sounds like this company is multifaceted, which is really interesting and great to see. But I think graphic design specifically falls under the creative economy and the fact that they produce and distribute physical goods as well. I would encourage them to walk through the application, and there's going to be a very, very quick eligibility quiz in the very, very front of both applications. They're simple yes or no questions. So one, read through the program guidelines, the FAQs. We have extensive FAQs. And then walk through the eligibility questions. It seems like you would be eligible to apply just based off the brief description that I see. In the application itself, you can better describe your business and activities, elaborate a little bit more. But it sounds like you would qualify under the creative economy sector, which does include graphical services and things of that nature. So I would encourage you to apply.
All right, and now I have a translated question here from one of our breakout rooms. It asks, if companies started in 2022, do they not qualify for these grants?
No, they are not eligible to apply for these grants. A business must be active in an operation prior to January 1st, 2021.
Okay. I've got another question here. It asks, can a travel agency apply for Working Washington 5 and or the Convention Center grants?
Yes, if they meet the eligibility criteria.
All right, all right. All right, I want to remind everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. And again, if we do not get to all of them today, we will get those answers and send them as a follow-up to you. As I'm looking for our next question, this comes from Lenore. It asks, because of one large donation, we had an increase in revenue from 2019 to 2020, but we had a large loss from 2020 to 2021. Are we still eligible to apply for the grant?
Yes, I would encourage you to still apply. You will be required to provide your financial documentation, and also you will be required to describe to us the financial hardship that you experienced due to COVID-19. So your financial hardship must be directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic and not any other extenuating circumstances. So I would encourage you to apply, be truthful in your application, and we will consider all eligible applicants.
All right, great. We have another question here. It asks, if we already received a 20,000 Working Washington grant in the past, do I still qualify to receive this one?
You are eligible to apply if you received prior Working Washington grants.
Okay. All right, let's see. Here's an, oh, sorry, my Q&A box keeps keeps shifting on me. All right, the next question asks, is a business license an accepted document to submit if a business address or the name of the business needs corrections?
It doesn't sound like it.
Okay. Okay.
If it needs corrections, it would not be the right document to send because it won't be validating what it's saying who you are. The idea of the uploaded documents is to validate or prove that you are who you're saying you are. So you need something that can do that.
All right. All right, our next question asks, does receipt of PPP loans, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, does receipt of the PPP loans affect your eligibility for this grant?
No,
that does not. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thanks, Shannon.
No, that does not affect your eligibility. If you still are eligible to apply if you have received PPP loans, as long as you meet all the other eligibility requirements.
All right, and there are some questions about that UBI number. It looks like there's some people may not know if they have one or not. If you needed to check or you needed to get a UBI number, where should they go to do so?
This is Janie. They can go to the Department of Revenue website at www.dor.wa.gov as in Victor. And they can put in their entity name and do a search. There are several other search mechanisms that they can select from, but that will pull up the information for the entity for the state of Washington.
All right, and is having a UBI another requirement to receiving the Working Washington 5 grant?
Yes, having a UBI is an eligibility requirement.
All right, so if you don't have one, we'll need to go get you one. Definitely.
One exception to that is if it's a business or a nonprofit that's registered with a tribal government, but in general, applicants need a UBI.
Oh, great. Thank you for that clarification.
I can further clarify too. So the majority of our tribal member-owned businesses do have UBIs. There's some that are exempt from having UBIs. Those entities would need to provide a valid registration or license with a federally recognized tribe in Washington state. That's the only exception, but the majority do have UBI numbers.
All right, well, we have another question on the 990, which I think we covered a little bit, but I'm just going to reiterate it. It asks, our fiscal year ends August 31st, so it's impossible to get our 2021 990 done by your deadline. What do we do? And I think Lynn or Shannon, I think you were talking that you might be researching if that's an option, but I'll go ahead and just turn it back over to you.
For nonprofits or businesses whose fiscal years don't align with the calendar year, we ask you to submit your tax documentation that you submitted in 2019, 2020, and 2021.
All right, perfect. All right, another question asks, if our nonprofit arts organization was forced to close and lost revenue during the pandemic, but it was supported by PPP loans. Can we demonstrate hardship due to COVID?
You know, that will be a question that businesses need to consider before they apply. If they receive substantial forgivable loans and grants, then that's up to them if they feel confident that they can demonstrate financial hardship due to some of the support that they have received. So I can't specifically answer that question for an individual business, but I could recommend that they walk through and answer the questions truthfully and honestly. And if they deem that they still have experienced financial hardship, then I encourage them to apply.
All right, and here's a quick question, I believe. It asks, are restaurants eligible to apply?
Yes, absolutely, if they meet the eligibility criteria.
All right, our next question asks, is there a maximum amount a business can recover based on the type of business? I thought I heard a statement that the maximum was $75,000 for some other businesses, but $500,000 for convention businesses.
Happy to clarify. So the legislature has provided limitations to the amount of grants we can award under Working Washington Round 5 and Convention Center grant programs. The maximum grant we are legally allowed to award is $75,000 under Working Washington Grants Round 5. However, we have not set a minimum or maximum for our grant program yet. Legally, we just can't issue a grant more than $75,000. That does not mean that our max grant award will be $75,000. We have yet to determine that. That will be determined based off application volume, magnitude of reported losses, and some additional considerations, recent Working Washington grants received, and max caps of 30% of revenues for any final award. For the Convention Center grants, the max allowed set by the legislature is $500,000 grants. So legally, Commerce cannot issue a grant under that program that's more than $500,000. Same for Working Washington. We have not set a minimum or maximum grant award for our programs yet. That will also be determined by those varying factors.
All right, thank you. And we are getting close to the end of the program. We had over 121 questions here today. And I will just say again, we will work to get answers to those questions that you submitted in the Q&A box. And we will get a transcript of those questions and answers out to you again as a follow-up after this program. So before we close our program today, I want to quickly review the assistance that is available to organizations that are interested in this grant opportunity. The Washington State Department of Commerce will have the support lines, as they talked about. This is both phone and email. These will be available online when the grant opens on August 17th. OneEastside SPARK is hosting a series of in-person small group meetings to assist organizations in East King County. We also have a number of community-based organizations that are providing support, including the African Chamber of Commerce of the Pacific Northwest, Big Hug, the Korean American Resource Center, Centro Cultural Mexicano, the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Washington State, and El Centro de la Raza, and Indian American Community Services, and the Muslim Association of Puget Sound, or MAPS. I encourage you to reach out to these groups if you have questions or need assistance. Thank you to all our speakers for giving us your time and expertise today. We so much appreciate all this information that you gave to us. A reminder to our attendees, again, we will have an email going out to you with a recap of all this information. And on August 18th, we will have a follow-up webinar that will be covering the Working Washington 5 grant application in detail. And I also want to thank, again, all our partners on the East Side who are working hard to support the business community. Please make sure to bookmark this site, oneeastside.org/spark. There you will find key resources, information on our no-cost one-on-one advising, our webinars and grant opportunities as they become available. And a big thank you to all of you for participating in our webinar today. So until we see you again, this concludes our program.